Hello, my name's Lee, and if you're watching this video you've probably either bought or are thinking about buying one of these, which is my spoon Scorp in kit form. So what you will receive is a handle billet with the tang slot already cut for you. You will get the blade in its protective box secured with the peg. So the first thing you will need to do is to decide what shape of handle that you want to fit. This is my preferred design, but obviously the reason you've probably bought the kit is because you want to put your own version on. So I'm not going to go into the shape in the handle. That's entirely up to you how you go about doing that and what shape you make it. One thing I just want to mention is that I've ground the tang on these blades to show you along here where I want that much tang being set into the handle. Now you'll find that the slot is very slightly deeper than it needs to be. That's just to give you the opportunity to trim up this end grain, but what you should be leaving exposed is just this dark part of the tang here. So let's assume that you've done the handle work, you've shaped up your handle. Obviously the next thing you've got to do is glue this in place. I would recommend using epoxy resin, and you want to mix up enough to kind of 3/4 fill the hole. Make sure that you degrease the tang of the blade, and then you're going to want to set this in until it's sitting nicely while the glue's still liquid. Make sure that you've got the blade aligned how you want it to be in the handle, so sighting it forwards and backwards and make sure it looks good. And then what I normally do is just have something to prop this up in. You could hold it in a vise or a bit of pipe lagging or something, just to stand this upright while the glue goes off. Once the glue's gone off, then you're ready to do the rest of the work, which is what we're going to look at in this video. So for now, I'm just going to put that to one side because that is a kit that's ready to go. The other thing you're going to get is this little bag of accessories. There's a couple of bits of bamboo peg in there that will be explained shortly, and there's just a couple of options on the cord that you attach the peg with. So there are a couple of options on lanyards for you. So there is your kit effectively. I'm going to work on one that I've already got prepared. As it stands, the handle doesn't fit the box and it won't go into the box far enough for the peg to secure it. That's going to bottom out on the blade itself. So what I like to do, and this is optional, if you really want to, you could just shorten the length of the box until it butts up to the handle and it drops in to where the peg's got to go. What I like to do is just to index the box very slightly so it gives a positive firm location for the handle and it stops it rotating in the box, which is going to save the edge knocking into the box and, you know, causing damage either way. So this is what we're going to look at doing first, is actually letting the handle into the box. For this you are really going to need a bench vise, and I'm going to just remind you now that the spine of the blade should be what goes in line with the open side. There's no hole on the back of the box, so the edge is facing downwards away from the hole. This prevents you from cutting the end of the peg if the blade's not quite lined up in the hole when you go to put it in. So to start with, we're going to want a bench vise that we can pop this in and clamp it up firmly with a backstop so that we're supporting all of this outside wall of the box. And then we're going to drop the whole tool in just to mark where the actual handle is going to want to be let into the box. So I'm just going to make a mark here and then mark these little bevels on the handle. So you'll have to adjust this to whatever shape your handle is, but you want to make sure it stays in one place and also that it's roughly centered, because obviously you could lean it one way or the other. So hold it nice and vertical so you can see over the top, and once we've got our marks in place, we're ready to remove some of that material. What I find is the best tool for that job is a little 6mm or 1/4 inch bench chisel, and all I'm going to do is just inside my pencil marks, just push it in. These boxes are made of pine, so you don't need a huge amount of force, just to push it in to stop it breaking out from the edges there. And then with the bevel of the tool facing downwards, push it in to the full width of that recess into the grain that way, and then we can just again come slightly in front of our line and just pop some waste out there, and then we can kind of creep up on our line, just removing a little bit of material each time until we get this aperture opened up for the handle itself. Just popping the waste out as we go, and I'm working on the side that's facing this backstop, and all I've got is a piece of plywood to just raise the height of my vise very slightly. And then if we need to make it a bit deeper, we can just gradually creep up on it and trim away any excess material. But what I can't do is kind of work towards myself very effectively because the box isn't supporting it. It'd be really awkward, so I'm just going to flip it round in the vise to work on this opposite side, and the procedure is the same. Just push it into those diagonal cuts a little bit, then go in with the bevel down and press it in that way. Having the bevel down just means using the chisel at an angle, the bottom of that recess is flat, and then we can come in from the top again. No reason to use a mallet, just a little tap with the palm of your hand should just remove that material. You don't want to overdo it. And then we're just going to creep up on the line again and just remove that waste. Now it's time to just check whether we've got a good fit or not, which we probably won't have first time. Just to make sure we're the right way around, I'm just going to pop it out of the vise, and here's the tool. It wants to go in, and it's just started to engage on the bevel on the edge of this handle, and I can see that the blade is about halfway through the peg hole now. So I'm getting, it's started to seat, and I can see now, just looking down here and sighting this up, where I need to remove some more material. So you can give yourself a little guide again with the pencil if you want, just where you want to remove some extra material. And the fact that it's started to locate makes that job a little bit easier. And there's not a lot that needs to come off there. So I'm just going to go straight back in the vise. And we're aiming for quite a tight fit, but not enough that when we force the handle in that we split the box. So it's quite a delicate process. I wouldn't rush it. I'm just going to take a little bit more material out until we get a nice comfortable fit. And what I do need to do is take it very slightly deeper. So I'm going to cut into this end grain again with a bevel down and just make these recesses another couple of millimeters deeper, so that when the handle is all the way in, it's kind of set up against the nice shoulder inside the box. So I'm paring down with the grain first and then just cutting that off across the grain afterwards. So now we're all the way in. It's gone in with a slight little bit of force, but not too much. And now there's no rattle there. It's all the way in. We can just double check that by making sure the peg's going to go all the way home. The pegs are very slightly bigger in the middle than they are at both ends, so it should be easy to locate. Bit of resistance to push it in, and then it should seat quite nicely. But you'll see that the peg is completely round at this stage. So these have just been turned. I find it is beneficial to have flats on the side, so if you do need to give it a twist to get it out, it's just that bit easier to grip. So the next thing we're going to do, now we know that that's all fitting nicely, is just to work on the peg itself. Now in the bag with the little lanyard pieces is going to be these two little bamboo pegs, and these, I'm just supplying these to make this job a little bit easier. They're about 3mm in diameter. And then we're just going to want a scrap of wood, and it doesn't matter what type of wood, this just happens to be a piece of plywood. And we're going to need 3 drill bits, a 10mm, a 5mm and a 3mm. And the first thing I want to do is just put the 10mm drill bit into a power drill. It could be a bit and brace, whatever you've got to hand. And I just want to start a drill hole and just drill it a few millimeters deep, and that is so that the end of the peg can just sit in there. So we don't need these little bamboo bits yet, but they'll come into play in a moment. Just going to clear the vise, and I'm going to introduce my bench hook here. So I've got a surface to work down onto. If you haven't got one of these, I'd strongly recommend making one. Again, this is just a dead simple piece of ply and a couple of bits of batten just glued together so you can grip it in the vise. Gives you a little bit of a backstop here, and we can put our piece of scrap material down here. And now I've got a slightly wider chisel. This is a 1 inch or 25 millimeters, and I'm just going to look at the grain orientation of the peg and try and work with that a little bit. And I'm just going to put the peg in that depression, and then I'm going to pinch the blade against the shaft of the peg. So I'm going to pare off some of this waste, and this is where a little club or mallet does sometimes come in handy. Just holding the back of the peg with my thumb and the chisel, so obviously my fingers are away from the edge of the blade. Just a little tap to pare off that waste there. Spin it around 180 degrees. Introduce the chisel again, trying to keep those faces parallel. And another little tap there to get rid of that waste. So we've basically just put 2 flats on opposite faces of that peg. Now we're going to use the scrap material again, and we're going to lay one of those faces flat on the material, and we're going to change drill bits for the 3 millimeter. Lock that up in the chuck, and what I want to be doing is putting the drill bit in firstly on one shoulder. So I don't actually need the peg for this, I could just drill a hole in the piece of plywood. Then what I'm going to do is take one of these little bamboo pegs and just tap it into that hole and seat that up against the shoulder of the peg and drill a hole opposite to that. It's quite snug to the other shoulder. Just get rid of some of the swarf there, and again tap this into the hole. This is just going to help to keep the peg steady as I drill the hole, so I can hold on to the shaft of the peg and drill the holes here. Now I could carry on and do the 3 millimeter hole, but what I've found is when you're going to tie the lanyard on, you're going to get the material for the lanyard through a 3 millimeter hole, but to seat the knot you want a 5 millimeter hole that goes halfway through the peg. So I'm just going to position that on the flat fairly near to the shaft and drill about halfway through with this 5 millimeter bit, and then swap that out for the 3 mil, and then continue through to the back side. So we've got a 3 millimeter hole on the back and a 5 millimeter hole that goes halfway through on the front. And then just the last bit here is, these are cleft faces now, they're quite rough, and we've got some sort of tear out where we've drilled the holes. So we can put this piece of scrap up against our bench hook here, place the peg in, and then just use the chisel just to pare away some of this waste and just clean up those faces of the peg so they're nice and smooth. The little bamboo pegs are sacrificial, but they just help to stop the chisel running into the shaft of the peg and just give you a fairly firm surface to work up against. But if you obviously do overdo this, you're probably going to blast straight through the bamboo pegs as well. But if you just approach it gently, take light shavings just to clean up that surface, then there's your finished peg. And all you need to do now is choose which material that you're going to attach it to the box with. There's just some little bits of sash cord here, and the way I found is best is to first of all take one end of the cord and poke it through the hole in the top of the blade box, and a little bit of a twisting motion as you do that helps it to find its way through the hole, and we're going to push it all the way through until it comes out the bottom. Then we just need to tie a little overhand knot just to put a stop in there. We can trim off this excess. I'm going to leave it a bit long because I'm going to be pulling this out again shortly, but if we pull that in, there's a 5 mil hole recessed in the bottom of box there, so that knot should kind of lock this cord into place. Then we want to thread through the 3mm side of the peg, so it comes out the other side. Pull that tight, put the peg in place and work out how much of a hanging loop you want to have on here. I normally find that's plenty, so then I allow between 1/2 inch and 1 inch extra just to tie another stopper knot. And with this sash cord, you'll probably find that going through twice gives you a little fisherman's knot, which will lock into that 5mm hole a bit better. When you pull it back, that should snug down into the hole and means that the cord is fairly captive, then it's not going to slip in and out. And then you can just trim off the excess here with a pair of scissors and away you go. So that's basically what we're looking to achieve, is that nice firm fit with the handle in that side and the peg, so nothing's rattling around, the blade's quite secure, you've got somewhere to hang it up if you want to. So there we go, that's what you need to do with your kit. If you do have any trouble, you can always email me, but hopefully this video will give you a little bit of a guide on how to go about completing this element of the job anyway. So there you go, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy your new spoon Scorp.